the black man bought two banks in order to buy real estate and rent in the United States. In 1939, little Bernard shined shoes for white people at the bank gate. As he rubbed and listened to their conversation, he took a small book to write down the accented words, or climbed to the window and eavesdrop on bank executives. Dad looked at his notes and said he was very talented. But this is Texas, where black people can't make money the way white people do, or they'd die. In 1954, he and his wife came to Los Angeles for development and temporarily lived in his uncle's house. His uncle said the airline to recruit, he can help arrange the interview. But Bernard said that he came here to engage in real estate instead of working as an employee. Facing the irony of expression, Bernard was more determined. After he sent his cousin to work, he went around where white people lived. Finally, he found the garden apartment building. Patchwork could also buy the building, but the money for decoration was not enough. He went alone to talk to Patrick, the owner, but it didn't conform to his business rules. After being rejected, Bernard saw a bank's name behind the owner. He immediately thought of a crazy idea and went directly to the bank to find the credit manager. But the receptionist saw that he was black and said that the manager was not there. In the evening, Patrick called and asked if Bernard had used his name and bank loan. Sure enough, you can't do big business by following the rules. Bernard succeeded in getting a bank loan, officially opening the first step of his real estate empire. Bernard asked his cousin to start decorating the house. Soon, Matt, his cousin's friend, came to help, and the apartment quickly rented out. Patrick, the former owner, saw the business opportunity and invited Garrett to make it bigger and stronger. By telemarketing, when signing a contract, it's up to Patrick to come forward and divide the account by 50-50. They bought more houses, redecorated them all, and rent them out. Soon, Bernard finally had his own house. But it didn't last long. One night, Patrick died unexpectedly. His wife didn't like black people and didn't want to work with Bernard. She wanted to sell all his shares at a low price. Anyway, the house purchase contract was signed by her husband. The lawyer said the shares could testify on behalf of the manager. But without Patrick, the credit manager, not even see him, Bernard walked out of the bank angrily but also pressured down. Because he thought of a clever way, it's to buy the building. He found Joe and said they would buy the bank building together. If they bought the bank building, the bank would have to think about it when they wanted to refuse their loan application. This business could be done, but they were black. How can they buy a white man's building? Bernard had been thinking about it for a long time. He let his cousin's white friend Matt act as his spokesperson, and he manipulated it behind his back. To do business, you have to understand social rules, such as golf, financial knowledge, drinking, and so on. After professional training, Matt changed from an employee to an upper-class person with high taste. After several exchanges, Matt became familiar with the owner of the building and took the opportunity to come up with the idea of buying his own building. At first, the owner wanted to sell for $2.4 million, but Matt kept the owner speechless with all kinds of survey data and market information that he had learned by rote from Bernard. Finally, the price was reduced to $1.56 million. Bernard and Joe bought the bank building and applied for more loans. They bought apartments in the white man area and then rent out to earn more money. The real estate empire had been built, and the next step was to buy banks. In 1963, Bernard returned to his hometown in Texas to visit his family. Back in Los Angeles, he found Joe to discuss the acquisition of the bank in his hometown. In addition to big real estate, it could also help many black compatriots start businesses with loans. Joe didn't think it's a good idea and it's risky, but he's willing to join. They continued to make Matt the spokesperson, bought this bank and another bank. Bernard changed his loan policy and began to make loans to black people in the town. His behavior was discovered by Robert, the son of the former president of the bank. It was a great shame to learn that his real boss was two black people. One day, he went to have a showdown with Bernard. He said that someone anonymously reported their bank's illegal lending, and people from the office of the Comptroller of Currency would come to investigate. Because black people couldn't enter the bank at will, Bernard and Joe could only pretend to be a cleaner and a driver, ready to mention how Matt should deal with the investigators. They tried every way, but the investigators found the problem. Matt said something. It turned out that he used a lawyer recommended by Robert to work for himself. So he got 300,000 non-performing loans. To fill this hole, Matt came up with a way to buy these non-performing loans through another bank in their name. But this was fraud in law. Obviously, they were trapped. The office of the Comptroller of Currency closed their bank, and Bernard and Joe were arrested by the FBI. Matt couldn't bear the pressure, admitting the fake bank loan valuation, an illegal transfer of loans between the two banks, were manipulated by Bernard and Joe. During the night, Bernard and his lawyer went to see the senator. The senator said if he helped the Senate in the hearing to reiterate white supremacy, he's sure to drop all charges, or he would be besieged by white Texans. Soon the hearing began. Bernard didn't compromise. Instead, he took out his tooling and challenged him. Why do black people have to wear work clothes to go to the bank? After the hearing, Bernard and Joe were sentenced to 3 years for abusing bank funds. Only one of their 177 properties remained in Bernard's wife's name, and the rest were confiscated. Bernard and Joe were released 3 years later. They felt it still fine, because they still had 2 properties in the Bahamas. It turned out that the night before Matt appeared in court, he asked Bernard to meet and talk about the pressure he faced. If he didn't follow what they said, they had a way to put him in prison for 50 years. Bernard didn't complain, just made a request to Matt to help him buy 2 adjacent properties in the Bahamas. Relying on these 2 properties, Bernard and Joe made a comeback in the Bahamas. Later, they moved back to the United States and continued to buy houses in the White District and rent them to black people. It's called The Banker, which is based on real people. In 1968, the U.S. Congress passed the Fair Housing Act to prohibit racial, religious, and gender discrimination in the sale and leasing of properties.